It looks like signs of struggle, looks like blows either to the genital area or to the head. And then it looks like he tried to crawl to get help and died in his pool of his own blood trying to do that.
Would OpenAI murder a whistleblower? My name is James Lee, and you're watching Beyond the Headlines on Breaking Points. On November 26, 2024, Suchir Balaji, a 26-year-old former researcher at OpenAI, was found deceased in his San Francisco apartment. The city's medical examiner determined the cause of death to be a suicide, with no evidence of foul play. Balaji first joined OpenAI in 2020, but over time he became concerned about OpenAI's use of copyrighted material in training its AI models. He left the company in August of 2024, and just 2 months later, publicly accused OpenAI of violating US copyright laws. His accusations have become central to several lawsuits against the company, all the while OpenAI CEO Sam Altman was restructuring the organization from a nonprofit to a for-profit enterprise. Balaji's family has pushed for a deeper investigation, casting doubt on the official conclusion of suicide.
There was no suicide note left, and there is nobody else in the scene. That doesn't mean they can just come to conclusion. And we have seen the bloodshots in the bathroom, signs of fight in the bathroom.
Balaji's departure from OpenAI, his whistleblowing, and his involvement in several high-profile lawsuits against the company raise a troubling question. Is there more to his death than we've been told? So today I'm joined by investigative journalist George Webb, who's been working very closely with Balaji's family, gathering additional evidence that could point to potential foul play. George, welcome to Breaking Points.
James, great to be here. I've always watched Breaking Point, but now guess what? I'm a guest, so this is great.
Yeah, great to have you with us. So I first want to start with laying out some official facts that were released by the SFPD, which is that Suchir Balaji, his body was found on November 26th. He died of an apparent gunshot wound, and the medical examiner ruled it a suicide. So can you help us by first summarizing what you know about the circumstances around Suchir Balaji's death, what he was doing in the days before, who was he in contact with, and, was there something amiss in terms of his behavior leading up to his death? What can you tell us?
Well, I've spent a lot of time with the family, and one thing I can say, having visited the place where he died and taking a lot of film, a lot of video of the death site, and going around the apartment, which a lot of it I published for a couple of hours, so people saw the proof. He was on a hiking trip to Catalina, which is near Los Angeles, Catalina Island, for 4 days, from the 18th to the 22nd. His birthday was the 21st. He came back, all the 4 guys that he went with are regular hiking partners. He went with all of them to Patagonia in April. They all said he was in high spirits. They all knew about the lawsuit. He had just been named in the New York Times lawsuit on the 18th of November. He ordered a Thai chicken at 6:13 the night of the 22nd in high spirits. He talked to his father at 7:15 in high spirits. They made a plan to go to Las Vegas to do a trip in January. So they were in high spirits, and then he's dead sometime between the 22nd and the 23rd, according to the SFPD. The mother calls for wellness check on the 23rd. He doesn't answer his phone. That's not like him. She does the same thing on the 24th. That's not like him. She goes physically there and does a door knock on the 25th. He doesn't answer. Now she's really worried. She calls the police. The police can't come on the 25th. They come on the 26th. That's when they come and find the body about 1:15. She doesn't get into the apartment until the 27th. So that's kind of the chronology, kind of how it's laid out.
So I know that the police or the parents have been pretty vocal around, questioning the official police report. So what are some of the details that you can share with us that makes you believe that this could have been foul play versus what the police, I think, very quickly ruled it as a suicide?
Yeah. Well, he was very close to his mother. He was in high spirits. They are missing this drive, this thumb drive that could be a very high capacity thumb drive with a lot of information relevant to the New York Times lawsuit. Him being named in the lawsuit on the 18th, him going public saying the New York Times copyright violations in a big article on the 26th of October. All these things don't look good in terms of timing. It's sort of like being named as a mob witness on the 18th and being dead on the 23rd. Well, yeah, you could be suicidal, but it could be that you're killed by the mob too. But then seeing the physical evidence, no suicide, no, these are circumstantial things, but actually seeing the physical evidence. The physical evidence is he's standing by the sink in his own bathroom, 835 square feet apartment in the Haight district of San Francisco. Looks like he's dripping blood straight down in a raindrop spatter pattern. So he's sort of hit from behind or from the side. And there's a small waste can that's knocked over. It looks like he's flossing his teeth because one of those little floss brush things flies out of, and you can see that on the floor. Then it looks like he's turned around and then is forced to sit down in his bathroom. The bullet goes through between the eyes, a little bit shading over toward the right temple, and then misses the brain. Again, who shoots himself and misses their own brain at that point blank range? It lodges between his C1 and C2 in the back of his vertebrae. So it's, you would think a Glock bullet would go through the body. It seems like a lower caliber. But anyway, he turns while he's seated, falls forward, and then there's 3 distinct pools of blood. It looks like he crawls through and gets to his bathroom transom, the doorway, and he gets his head out of the bathroom and bleeds to death there in a very large pool of blood there. So it's really the blood evidence to me that said this person was hit. There's 3 discontinuous pools of blood. Looks like they might have been hit successively as they were trying to crawl out of the room, and then finally they bleed to death. They don't die from their brain shot. It looks like a bleeding out. I'd also gotten a leak 2 weeks earlier from the coroner's office. These death examiners, when something's being covered up, a lot of times they'll leak, and they said blunt force trauma to the head. That turned out to be true. I reported that over 2 weeks ago before I ever saw the scene. Plus blunt force bleeding, or bleeding from the nose and bleeding from the mouth, also bleeding from the private parts. Now that we don't know if the straight down blood drops of somebody kicking him, from in the genitals or something from behind, and that's where the blood's from. We don't know the answer to any of those things yet, but it matched what the leaks were from the coroner's office. So for all those reasons, it looks like signs of struggle, looks like blows either to the genital area or to the head, and then it looks like he tried to crawl to get help and died in his pool of his own blood trying to do that.
So I hear a lot of evidence, or a lot of the things that you talked about have not been mentioned in the media at all. I think it's been pretty clean in terms of the reporting that it was a suicide. There was nobody else in there. You talked about trauma to the head. You talked about a potential struggle. What are some of the pieces of evidence and who is collecting this evidence? Is it the police that has this evidence? Is it the parents? Is there a private investigator involved? Can you talk a bit more about this process of evidence gathering that seems to present some new information that would, at the very least, maybe open up for additional investigation by the police?
Well, I collected my own with my iPhone and got it to journalists such as you, Mario Nafal, Ian Carroll, others, Kristen Ruby, and others, just to make sure that it got out. And if I ended up being unalived or suicided, I wanted to make sure other journalists had this information. But they did hire a private investigator. I have not been paid one penny by the family, but they have hired their own investigator. But the things that led me to believe it was a suicide was the drawers were ransacked all out. He seemed to be a very tidy person. He was cutting his fingernails, and then he was flossing his teeth. I'm not very good about flossing my teeth every day. Like maybe I might do that once a month. He's like flossing his teeth and doing his nails. Why does he have all of his drawers, akimbo? Why is all of the stuff he owns out on his kitchen table all in a mess? Why are all the cupboards thrown open? Who would do that before they shot themselves? It doesn't make any sense. It looks like somebody's searching for that drive. And the parents mentioned this drive over and over, that they knew it existed. The phone right now is in escrow, and so is the laptop. So they at some point need to get the judge's permission because it's involved in the New York Times case. But there will be additional evidence on that phone and that laptop. But who would put out a gun and then put the the registration, the dross registration, meaning you haven't got the gun yet, right? But putting it out right on top of the gun cases it's opened. That just seems like an orgy of evidence, a stage scene. So none of the things that I saw made any sense other than someone looking for the drive, making sure that they questioned him to say, where is it? And then going through the house and then after murdering him.
Yeah, I want to be careful about not, insinuating anything in terms of what the conclusion is before we know more evidence. But if we were to talk a little bit about the motives, right? We do know that Balaji, that he published findings on why he thought OpenAI was violating copyright law. He is named, like you said, in several lawsuits against the company. And I imagine, in the wider context, Sam Altman's plan to restructure OpenAI from nonprofit to for-profit, this could be a potential snag in that transition. So a lot of people online are, kind of trying to connect the dots there. But do you think do you think OpenAI would do something like that to a former employee? Do you think there's an actual connection that could be made there? Or do you think, maybe Balaji's death was completely unrelated to that?
I definitely think the motive is a profit motive for his murder. I wouldn't put OpenAI, I don't suspect OpenAI. They spent 4 years and $100 million training the engine that Balaji worked on with John Schulman. I look at the people who've ripped off OpenAI, like DeepSeek in China. Their training, if you ask DeepSeek who it is, 5 times out of 8, it tells you it's ChatGPT. To me, that's an obvious sign that it's copied.
And what is DeepSeek for those who are not familiar?
DeepSeek, in my opinion, is a ripoff of OpenAI. It looks like they've taken the training data, which is the common crawl, is what you start with, is kind of like what Sergey Brin and Larry Page started with Google. And then you add in specialty data sources and you get a mix of experts that create your particular language model for your particular need. DeepSeek just seems to be a straight out copy in China. So there's a definite China thread here that I'm looking at. That's why I'm on Sand Hill Road. I'm looking at Accel partners. Accel was Amit Kumar was meeting and working with Suchir Balaji, and he was going to do a startup with 5 startups. It was going to be somehow in terms of neural processing. This is the idea of you don't have to do as much human training as you can use a neural link or some kind of brainwave reader. So there's a lot of things going on here, but it's all about Silicon Valley. It's all about the profit motive. It's all about the profits of AI going forward. This isn't a $1 billion game here. This is a $1 trillion game. And Al Capone murdered people for a lot less than $1 trillion. So that to me is the motive. I don't see OpenAI's incentive here to create a cloud and kill somebody who has just done New York Times articles, because now it's just going to make it worse. You've made a sacrificial martyr out of Suchir Balaji. That doesn't make any sense to me. And these other spinoffs, these other AI spinoffs here in Silicon Valley, to me, seem to be the key beneficiaries.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's probably a thread that not a lot of people have pulled in terms of the public knowledge about AI is very much focused on OpenAI and Sam Altman versus a lot of these other spinoffs and competition that you just talked about. So I think there's a bit more to pull there. And then just to go back to the parents a little bit, what can you tell us about the next steps that they're taking? Is there investigation being reopened by the SFPD? Is this just a private thing that they're doing? Kind of what additional avenues are being pursued to uncover the truth?
Well, I'm geofencing. Geofencing is where you establish a longitude and latitude kind of posts, and you create a fence, and then you can see what IP addresses came and went. And that can be helpful for sending everybody a text message saying, hey, did you hear a gunshot? If it turns out to be a Glock, like the staged evidence shows, that's 150 decibels. So that's going to be heard by somebody if it's a shot during the middle of the night. It wasn't on 4th of July. It wasn't on New Year's. So, it's not going to be confused with firecrackers. So that's an area of geofencing. I also want to do the friends who might be a part of the startup. Those people make sense to me to be, talking about the startup. They just got back from the camping trip. They're talking about the startup now. I can see those two things blending really easily. So those are the things that I'm doing. They're hiring a private investigator, the family who's going to do a separate investigation. I think that's going to be separate from mine. I don't know what direction they're going, but I talked to them about fencing and they thought that was a good idea, geofencing the data. I think also they're going to do more in terms of autopsy to try to get the forensics of the bullet and see if the forensics of the bullet actually match the barrel characteristics of the gun. I mean, I think that would have been something that SFPD would have done. Now, interesting twist here is Sam Altman is doing the transition for the next San Francisco mayor, who's going to be sworn in here in a week. That's Daniel Lurie. He's from the Levi Strauss fortune and billions. So there's a whole bunch of intrigue going on here in San Francisco.
Absolutely. Yeah. It seems to be quite a complex situation, a lot of intersection of different, very powerful groups. So before I let you go, George, I want to give you a chance to kind of talk a little bit about what you do. Sounds like, you've been at the game a long time in terms of journalism, investigative work, but it sounds like you have a tech background as well. So can you tell a little bit to the audience about that and also where people can follow you in terms of keeping up with the work that you do?
Sure. I was 35 years in high tech. I was in San Mateo. I was in Santa Clara, Palo Alto Networks of Nancy Pelosi, Genius Investing. I was there last night here on Sand Hill Road, where they used to be. There now in Santa Clara. So I spent 35 years in tech. And then 8 years ago, with one of the guys I worked with at Network Associates in Santa Clara, when Dmitry Alperovich from CrowdStrike was the guy who was talking about the DNC hack. And I knew we hired Dmitry at Network Associates, and he turned out to be writing back doors for the CIA. I said, no, Dmitry is the one who did the hack, and Dmitry is the one who is creating this hoax to make Trump look bad. Ever since then, I've been just kind of following Dmitry, and I got out of because I knew Dmitry from Network Associates. I knew he was a backdoor writer. That's what launched me into this, because I just said, this is a big lie. The whole Clinton thing was, I was a Bernie supporter at the time. As soon as I saw Dmitry involved with the hack analysis, I said, this is all a lie. And who can live this lie? What good is it having $750,000 in a couple of houses or whatever in cash if you're going to be living a lie? And so I just took my money and I put it into citizen journalism. And we've had 45 now different meetings of citizen journalists, 10 to 12 days over these different meetings we call Learning Man events. You can find me at georgewebb.substack.com for my daily writing. And then George Webb, Real George Webb 1 on Twitter.
All right, George Webb, everybody. I know this is a story that's still ongoing, still developing. And it sounds like there's a lot more that we don't know than what we do know. So let's stay in touch, George. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Okay, great. Thanks, James.
If you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.